Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Jenaya Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And we would like to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to please go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. If you do like the show, we are available across all major podcast platforms, so you can hit that subscribe button anywhere, including on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, even on iHeartRadio. And hey, leave us a review if you feel so inclined as well, as those reviews really help to get the name of our show out there. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate every little bit a lot. Okay, now that little bit of housekeeping is out of the way, let's talk about this start to the Washington Capitals season. And I would like to do something a little different here today, since we have already recapped all 4 of the games pretty well over on our YouTube channel. And if you have not subscribed to that already, what are you even doing with your life? Get on over there right after you finish listening to this episode and subscribe over there as well, as we are doing post-game reaction videos after every Washington Capitals game, and those are always a lot of fun. The YouTube channel is under the same name, Jenaya Talks Caps. But yeah, as I said, I would like to do something a little different here today, rather than, simply recapping each individual game again. As I said, we've already pretty much done that over on our YouTube channel. So I would today like to instead run through 5 kind of bigger picture observations, if you will, of this Washington Capitals season so far. And now, obviously, we are only 4 games in at this point, so it's still very, very early. But these are just 5 things to kind of keep an eye on moving forward. And then we are going to, if we have time, near the end of the show, do a pre-game primer for the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, that being on Tuesday night. So it's going to be a lot of fun today, lots of things to talk about. And so like I said, 5 observations from this Washington Capitals season so far. So observation number 1, for me anyway, and something that certainly I'm very interested to see how it progresses here, is that right now it is very, very evident that the Caps haven't yet gotten used to the new system of play that's being implemented by new head coach Spencer Carberry. And, that's to be expected, of course. But the question is, how long is it going to take before the Caps players start getting comfortable and confident in what they're supposed to be doing out there? Is it a few more games, a few more weeks, or is it going to be a few months? Because obviously, looking strictly just at this current season here and, not speaking in terms of the long-term bigger picture, but just looking at this current season here right now, in this present moment, time is of the essence here. Like I said, when you're looking at this season specifically, and of course the potential to make this season's Stanley Cup playoffs, which is what we all care about, right? So I do believe wholeheartedly that Spencer Carberry is going to be a very good coach for this team for a very long time, and the more time that he spends here, the team is only going to get better and better and better as they get more and more and more accustomed to what he wants them to do out there on the ice. But like I said, we're speaking right now just in terms of this season. So this 2023-2024 season, time is of the essence, like I said. And so certainly, you want guys to start figuring out exactly how to do what Spencer Carberry wants them to do out there, right? Sooner rather than later, preferably. Because you don't want this season to get away from you early on, because, you're essentially lost out there right now anyway, in a new system of play, which I think, as fans, it's pretty clear when we watch the team right now, that's pretty much exactly what we're seeing right now, right? Guys just look a little bit lost out there. So like I said, that is totally to be expected whenever you hire a new head coach, is that it does take some time. Of course, that's normal. But how fast can the players acclimate themselves to what Carberry wants them to do? That's going to play a huge, huge role in, I think, ultimately determining rather, whether or not we will see this team in the Stanley Cup playoffs come April. So that is a big question mark for me, and something that like I said, I'm very interested to see how it plays out here, is just how fast can the Caps get up to speed within their new system of play. And then observation number 2, or question mark number 2, if you will, for me, for this season would be kind of along the same lines as number 1 was, but with the power play specifically, instead of with the whole system as a whole. So how quickly can the Caps get themselves up to speed on the power play specifically? Because they've got a new power play coach in Kirk Muller, who's running things back there now. Blaine Forsyth, he's gone after 15 plus years, let go at the end of last season by the team. And so, this is an interesting question, because 15 plus years is a very, very long time. And even a lot of these Capitals players who play on that power play, a lot of them have been here for that entire 15 plus years as well. Namely Alex Ovechkin and Nicklas Backstrom. John Carlson has been here for nearly that long as well. Evgeny Kuznetsov is coming up on 10 years with the Caps. TJ Oshie has been here since 2015. So those are the 5 guys typically on that first unit of the power play. And so when you've been doing the same things on the power play for the last decade plus, and doing them pretty damn successfully, I might add, for the last decade plus, I would imagine that it is going to take a minute to kind of sort out the changes, right? To sort out what you're doing out there on the ice now, with the man advantage, what the new coaching staff is asking you to do. So, and hey, don't get me wrong, it is definitely a good thing that Blaine Forsyth is gone at this point. As we all knew, we could all see it. It was long overdue that the Caps made a change there, as the power play that he was running had gotten really, really stale in these last few years. So, change in that scenario is a good thing. I'm just saying that it's going to take a bit for these guys, who have, like I said, mostly very successfully up until these last few seasons, been doing the same things on the power play for the last decade plus. It's going to take a bit for them to get used to doing something different, something new. So the key for me, just like with the system as a whole, is, like I said, just how quickly can these guys figure it out? Because again, time is of the essence here for this season's playoff hopes. You have now started off the season, unfortunately, on an 0-for-13 run on the power play. So that's not great, and that's not going to be sustainable in terms of if you do want to make the playoffs. So playoff bound teams, we know they usually find a way to get somewhere around a goal per game on the power play. It's just so important in this league, in this modern day NHL, to supplement your even strength offense with that, to give your offense that little extra boost on the scoreboard. So we will see how quickly the Caps can figure that out. It's going to be, like I said, very important for their playoff hopes this season. And then observation number 3 for me has to do with the forward line combinations, or at least, that we've seen some forward pairs, I guess you could say, rather than trios. I'm saying pairs because there's some forward pairs on this team right now. If you look at 2 guys as kind of being a package deal, there's some forward pairs that definitely work very well together, right? And that should be kept together, in my humble opinion anyways. And then you can kind of mix and match the third guy on each of those lines until you ultimately find your best trios. Because right now, we have seen, for example, that Dylan Strome, he should definitely be Alex Ovechkin's centerman at this point in time. Those two work very, very well together. Their line combined for the Caps only 2 goals in the most recent game in Montreal. Their underlying analytics, their advanced statistics are very, very strong as well. And that's even dating back to when they played together last season as well. So that is a good duo right there. And then obviously we also know that Tom Wilson works very well, both with Alex Ovechkin and with Dylan Strome. So that is kind of an obvious option for right winger on that top line. But right now the Caps have got rookie Matthew Phillips playing that top line right wing spot and riding shotgun next to Alex Ovechkin and Dylan Strome. And I like that right now, honestly. As Phillips, obviously he's been very, very good. He actually leads the Caps in points right now, and he has 3 points in his last 3 games played as well. So he has certainly earned this opportunity. So we'll see what he can do with it. And, Phillips, he was also very good on a line with Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano to start the season as well. So that's always kind of another option that you can come back to. And actually Strome and Milano are another pair of forwards that works very, very well together. Connor McMichael and TJ Oshie as well. They have shown that they are building a ton of chemistry together. They are creating grade A scoring chances in bunches every single game. So to me, those two have to be a pair moving forward. And we're seeing right now that the Caps are using the line that was dubbed the BMW line last season. That, of course, being Nicholas Backstrom, centering Sonny Milano and Tom Wilson. And that line had some success together last season, although former head coach Peter Laviolette really didn't keep it together for long enough. He kind of broke them up too quickly. So we're going to see some more of that, it looks like. That's who Carberry had together for that game in Montreal. For right now, I think you basically start with Dylan Strome being Alex Ovechkin's centerman, and then you kind of build everything else out from there, using, like I said, the knowledge that some of these guys should be considered package deals, if you will, pairs that should not be separated unless you absolutely have to. Duos like an Alex Ovechkin and a Dylan Strome, or a Connor McMichael and a TJ Oshie. Duos where both the eye test and the analytics are screaming at you that it is a good pairing. So I do think that in the long run, you are going to see the Caps lines shaking out as being Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, Tom Wilson as the top line. I think the third line is going to go back to being Sonny Milano, Nicholas Backstrom, and Matthew Phillips, with a second line of Connor McMichael, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and TJ Oshie. And then obviously once Nick Dowd's healthy, then you have a fourth line of Dowd centering Beck Malenstein and Alexei Protas, which will of course put Anthony Mantha back out of the lineup as a healthy scratch. Basically the only changes with those line combinations from what they are right now currently would be just flip-flopping Tom Wilson and Matthew Phillips, and then obviously getting a healthy Nick Dowd back in the lineup in place of Anthony Mantha. That is a huge upgrade right there. Frankly, I was thinking about this today. I would much rather have Nick Dowd out there hobbling around on one leg than a fully healthy Anthony Mantha at this point. If I'm just being real with you guys. And who knows, if Kuznetsov ever gets his shit together as well, then all of a sudden you've got a ton of different options that you can utilize. But it's a lot more limited when you need Dylan Strome to be Alex Ovechkin's center, because Kuzi is out there, skating around in circles with his thumb up his ass seemingly every shift. So that limits a lot of things that you can do. And that certainly does lead me into my next point, observation number 4 on this list, which is that, Evgeny Kuznetsov and Anthony Mantha, and their sizable salary cap hits as well, they continue to be a hindrance for this team right now. I was fine with taking kind of a wait and see approach, if you will, with these two guys this season under, of course, a new head coach. Honestly, mostly just because we didn't really have any other options, given that there appeared to be no real trade market for either of them. But this has become a big problem for the Caps right now. It was a problem last season, and it's now appearing like it's going to be a problem again this season. They're honestly a couple of turds out there on the ice right now, turds that cost a combined $13.5 million against your salary cap, so that's not great. And I was never really buying into the whole Anthony Mantha redemption story as it pertained to him being a contributing member of this hockey team. Don't get me wrong. To be clear, I don't want you guys to get me wrong. I am happy for Anthony Mantha, the person, that he started seeing what he terms as a quote unquote mental coach. I'm very happy for him, if that's helping him personally. I'm very happy for him that he lost 10 pounds over the summer and that he feels good in his own body now. That's all great stuff. It really is. And I'm very happy, like I said, for Anthony Mantha, the human being who, by all accounts is actually a really, really great guy off of the ice. But just in terms of on the ice, right? In terms of, this notion that was kind of floating around out there during the off season, that he was suddenly going to, come back from this off season, from this summer, and he's suddenly going to be like this totally different player, this big contributor for this hockey team. I was never buying that, honestly, for 1 second. I'm sorry. And unfortunately for Anthony Mantha too, the job description for that $5.7 million paycheck that he collects, the job description for that is the on-ice stuff, right? You don't get $5.7 million per season for being a nice guy, unfortunately. But honestly though, Evgeny Kuznetsov, he probably, I would say, pisses me off just as much, if not more, than Anthony Mantha. And that's just because I think the overall skill level and the overall ability to influence a hockey game is just so much higher with Kuznetsov. He can take over games when he wants to, right? But he never wants to, it seems. He just chooses not to do it for whatever reason, which is it's unacceptable, right? When you're making, like I said, almost $8 million against your team's salary cap every single season. I did and I do still have some leftover hope that I'm kind of clinging to for Kuznetsov, to pull his head out of his ass here eventually. But if I'm being honest, if I'm being honest with you guys, if I'm being honest with myself as a fan, that hope has kind of faded down to basically nothing at this point. I have no hope left for Anthony Mantha as a cap, and I would say that my hope for Evgeny Kuznetsov as a cap at this point is hovering probably somewhere around 10%. So ultimately, the storyline here for the Caps is how can you fix this from a team standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, if this is what these guys, particularly Evgeny Kuznetsov, if this is what these guys are going to give you. Evgeny Kuznetsov, I say particularly him because he makes more money than Anthony Mantha. Anthony Mantha's contract is also up at the end of this season. So it's really only a concern for this season with Mantha. Whereas Kuznetsov, he's signed still for this season plus one more after this one. So Kuznetsov, obviously, like we all know, he makes $7.8 million per season. It was rumored that there was a little bit of trade interest from teams in Kuznetsov over the course of the offseason, but, obviously, given his decline, which we're not the only ones seeing it, right? You have to remember that. All of the other teams in the league are seeing it as well. So the rumor was that essentially no one wants to pay what the Caps want to get back for him. So if you are the Washington Capitals, and if Evgeny Kuznetsov continues playing like he has been, my question to you is, do you bite the bullet on a trade that gives you really low return and, just look at it as at least you're gaining $7.8 million in salary cap space? Because, that's probably honestly how I would look at it at this point. I think that's kind of how you have to look at it at this point. Because the Caps, they're not going to be able to ice a competitive team in the National Hockey League if you've got this guy taking up $7.8 million in salary cap space and contributing one assist every 4 games if you're lucky. It sucks to have to say it, but that's just the truth right now. It just is. I don't like saying it. I like Evgeny Kuznetsov. I like him as a guy off the ice. Like, I love his personality. I think he's one of the only players in the entire National Hockey League that will actually, tell reporters the truth when they ask him a question. He's very honest. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind. I love that about him. But like, there are going to be hard decisions to be made if he keeps playing the way that he has been for the majority of the last several seasons here. Because at this point too, it's like, okay, man, like, you've had several different coaches now, right? Several different systems that they've put you in. You've pretty consistently, I would say, been given the best line mates by all of those coaches. They give you all of the power play time that you could possibly ask for, even though you definitely haven't deserved it. So it's like, at this point, like, at what point is this actually your fault, man? Like, and boy, oh boy, did it ever bug me when Kuznetsov was trying to blame his struggles solely on Peter Laviolette, because it's like, dude, you have struggled now under every coach except for Barry Trotz, and even Barry was pissed off at you half the time that he was here. So it's like, take some accountability for your lackluster play. Like, you're a professional athlete. Your coach should not have to hold your hand to get you to try for the team that hands you a $7.8 million paycheck every season. You're a big boy. Figure it out. At some point, you have got to figure it out. Okay, and on that note, because I'm getting wound up here, so let's go to something more positive for the fifth and final observation. And that's going to be, you know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about the play of the young players on the Capitals, specifically Connor McMichael and Matthew Phillips, because they have been amazing. And, I mentioned already how Matthew Phillips is leading the entire Caps roster in scoring right now. He's tied with John Carlson for that distinction. So that obviously speaks for itself. And then Connor McMichael, like, I actually think that he's probably been the best player on the whole team to start this season. He is playing unreal. It hasn't really shown up on the stat sheet as of yet, but it will. It definitely will. He does have a goal already. He scored the game-tying goal in the Caps win against the Calgary Flames. But man, like, he has just been everywhere out there on the ice. He's creating so many grade A scoring chances for himself and for his line mates that, like I said, they're bound to start hitting the back of the net eventually. And when they do, like, watch out, because he is creating like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 great opportunities every game, for himself. And like I said, for his line mates as well. So I could easily see Connor McMichael topping 20 goals this season, no question. So that is definitely a positive for the Washington Capitals right now, is the play of some of their younger players, most or all of their younger players, actually, at least the guys who are in the lineup right now. So, okay, there you have it. Those are our 5 observations of this Washington Capitals season so far. And obviously, like I mentioned before, it is still extremely early. But these are just some things that, we can keep an eye on as well as we do move forward with the rest of the season here. Is there anything else that you guys have noticed about this Washington Capitals team early on? Let us know in the comments section. We always love to hear from you. You guys are what make this show so great and so much fun for us to do every single week. And obviously, we did run out of time here today as far as the pregame primer that we were planning to do. If we had time ahead of the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's okay. We will have plenty of time to talk about it afterwards. And by then, obviously, we will know the final score as well. So do drop your predictions for Caps versus Leafs in the comment section as well. Remember, it is an early start time for that game on Tuesday night. It starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time as part of the NHL's Frozen Frenzy night, which I think, is really just a fancy way of saying, like, hey, you know what? We scheduled 16 games on one night and only one game on the 2 nights before and after. Way to go, Gary. stellar scheduling, as always. All right, Caps fans, that is going to be it for us today. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all again so much for listening. If you do like the show and if you have a moment to spare, please do leave us that review. Like I said, if you feel so inclined, on whichever platform that you're using to listen to your podcasts, we would, like I said, really, really appreciate it. Those reviews, people don't realize, but those reviews go such a long way into making sure that our show gets recommended by these podcast platforms to new listeners. So we keep growing and growing and growing our community here every single week, thanks to you guys. And I personally am forever grateful for that and for you all as well. The more people that we can talk Capitals hockey with, the better, right? It's truly amazing how many loyal and passionate and dedicated fans this team has. It's always so, so great to see. Okay, on that note, it was a pleasure chatting with you all today, babes. Until next time, and as always, let's go Caps.